Should you buy an old BMW? That's gonna be the question for today's video. Now what I have behind me is my 1997 BMW 328i. In the past 2 years, I've actually owned 3 E36 BMWs, and I don't know if this is just a way of testing my limits and finding some cars that are more challenging, but I keep getting drawn back into these old BMWs for some reason, and I think I've kind of cracked the code as to why it is. Now, there's a lot to be said about owning an older car that could be very rewarding, especially if you're a car enthusiast. You know, it feels like a lot of us are going into the digital age where everything is so modernized with cars that they feel a bit numb. But when you go and hop in the wheel of something like this, it's very raw and analog, and there's a lot to be said there in terms of how much fun it can be. But it's not fun when you have to be bringing a piece of cardboard everywhere because your BMW is leaking everywhere. So what I wanted to do today is just share my overall insights and tips for you guys if you're in the market looking for a used BMW project car. Because I've gone through all of it, man. I feel like I've gone through all the psychological torture and pain that one human being can withstand without completely losing their mind, because I lost my mind a really long time ago. But anyways, before we get into the video, I did want to give a thank you and a huge shout out to New Finish for sponsoring today's video. I recently picked up this hardtop for my E36 convertible, which was a great find, but the rear visibility was awful. This has been sitting in someone's shed for years, and the original purple tint was completely hazy, and on top of that, the glass itself was pitted, making it tough to see out the back. So I decided to fully restore it using New Finish's Glass Restore and Repel kit. First, I removed the hardtop and used steam and a heat gun to strip off the worn out tint, which already made a huge difference. Then I applied New Finish's Glass Restore to smooth out the pitting and bring back the clarity. This improved the visibility and added a water repellent layer once we put on the ceramic coating, which was a huge game changer in wet conditions. Finally, I used New Finish's once-a-year car polish and sealant to bring back the deep shine of this Cosmo Schwarz metallic paint. This easy-to-use two-step glass kit polishes and then seals all your exterior glass surfaces for up to 2 years. Now the car looks amazing while being more functional. If you're working on restoring your car's glass and paint, New Finish is the way to go, and you can pick this up at your local AutoZone or with the link down below. So the first thing I want to bring up is the elephant in the room when it comes to leaks. Now, there's a lot of memes, there's a lot of jokes about these cars causing all types of leaks, and some of it, unfortunately, is true. Now, the whole reason that these have a tendency to leak, I think really comes down to the composition of whatever the rubber is, because I swear, it feels like they just make this stuff in the cheese factory, and it never has really gone away. It's just funny, you think they would like revise this stuff, but over time, it just gets, you know, to a point where it's going to be the same exact thing. So if we're just going to be talking about the E36 BMW in particular, there's going to be the common weak points. The Vanos system tends to leak. Oil filter housing gasket. So the oil filter housing lives on this side of the engine for this M52 in particular. And the way that it mates to the block is there's this like $5 gasket. Turns into a $500 job. It's not the worst thing in the world, or it will like leave you stranded on the side of the road, but you have to really monitor your oil levels. And that's just with the oil. Now, we haven't even gotten into the catastrophic cooling systems that come in these cars.
Oh my God, dude.
You want to pop open the hood? Well, very notorious for becoming very brittle and breaking over time. It usually happens right on the hose connecting point, and it will just quite literally just snap off. And this is something that Ray and I went through with this car. Like, it actually happened. So it's not just a fable, it's actually a real thing that happens with these cars. But don't even get me started on the power steering lines in these cars, because they're absolutely horrendous. They all leak. It's gonna drive you mad until you do it. Is it gonna leave you stranded again? No, but it's gonna be very annoying. So that's where all this stereotypes about these cars comes into play. Yes, they do weep. And it's even crazy enough, I let this car sit for a few months and then I come back and now the valve cover gasket's leaking onto the exhaust. I am not making that up. I even have a clip to prove it. But the biggest leak of them all, especially if you get a convertible, is the top. This one almost killed me, man. I had to chase this down for so long, and I literally had little 2 soup bowls that I'd have to put right below the A-pillars when I'd park this car in the rain because it was that bad. So essentially what happens with these, especially if you put a hard top on, is over time, you know, they flex and they get to a point where the water that's supposed to be channeling through here doesn't make it all the way through, and it'll start dripping into the car. And you think that that's not a big deal, but trust me, it can become a huge problem very quickly, because once you bring moisture into an interior, you're gonna have mold and mildew and all kinds of nasty stuff start to happen. Now, before this car turned into a biohazard, what I actually ended up doing is I used auto weather marine stripping, and I just laid a fat layer of it all the way across here, and it actually stopped the leak and made it really airtight when it comes into the cabin, surprisingly. If you want to replace the gasket on an old BMW like this, I looked it up, and I don't think they have it available here in the States the last time I checked, but it's over $800 for this stupid rubber that goes around the top, because they probably don't make them or they're super hard to find. So that's something you also have to think about too. When you start getting into German cars, you're gonna have to start paying for German car prices. You know, I think a lot of you guys are Honda enthusiasts like myself, and what's fun about those is you can go to a junkyard and you can quite literally rebuild, you know, half a Civic for a couple $100. Whereas with this, you can become bankrupt very quickly, and it just like happens and you don't even know where all your money went. And one of the biggest things that I've learned with owning one of these cars is that it really pays to work on your own stuff. Now, you can find a BMW technician that works on these more vintage cars. For example, if I ever run into a huge problem with my E36, I'd probably take it to somewhere like Midnight Motorsports. They're very local, and all they work on is these old BMWs, and they're never gonna go out of business. Every time I go over there, it's chocked full of these cars being worked on. But it pays to do your own work on this stuff, because it's actually not deliberately complicated. And if you're willing to, you know, go through the stress of sometimes where things can be annoying, it's not as bad as you would think. I think a lot of people think like, oh my God, it's gonna be so complicated. But that's the whole reason why I go for the older stuff. Now, if you were gonna give me a 2025 M4, I wouldn't even know where to begin with more of the hands-on work that needs to be done with this. But what's great about these is these old inline sixes are built like bricks. I mean, they are very stout, very reliable, can take a beating, and it's shown as the testament to all the other cars out there that they've done so many tests. There's even, I think it was Donut Media, they tried blowing up their E36 and they just had it pinned redline all the time, and it was boiling over, but the engine still kept running. So that's one of the good things about these from a reliability standpoint, is that they can really take it. But one thing that's really worth investing in too, if you were gonna start to drive these cars hard, is looking at the suspension components. So if you're gonna be picking out one of these, you wanna make sure that you find one that's in really good shape when it comes to just like how it looks underneath. You know, this is stuff like, does it have any sort of shock tower reinforcement? Because those are very notorious for tearing out. Or has the subframe bushings been redone? Are there any reinforcement plates in the back? Have they done the notorious rear sway bar mounting points? Those are gonna play a big role in making sure that your car is gonna be running reliably for a long period of time. And it's a bigger job, but it's not terrible to have to drop the whole rear end. But if you're gonna pay somebody to do it, then it's gonna be, you know, a pretty penny. Not to say that it wouldn't be worth it, but there's so much information on these cars, which is a huge plus. There's such a diehard community for these things. And I don't also like to stereotype like certain car communities, but as somebody that used to primarily only work on Subarus, it's a real thing. And what I've noticed in particular with the E36 community is that everybody seems to be pretty helpful from what I've seen. And I'm very active in like the E36 technical Facebook group. And I've learned a lot of stuff just by hearing what other people go through. And I've also shared some of the, you know, stuff that I've been also working on as well. So it's good to know that all of this stuff is very well documented, and you will have somebody that's probably made a video on this, just like in the same way that I'm making this video, where there's so much information on these cars that you can really figure out whatever it is, or see if anybody else has experienced this. And that's really the power of the internet and how it's all just being historically logged as we go through this. And just like with any old car, you really want to be looking at stuff like rust. Now, luckily over here in the Pacific Northwest, we don't have as big of an issue with rust, but you have to remember that this is a 25-year-old car. I mean, my early model E36 sedan is 32 years old. I don't even have to pay for tabs anymore because I have the vintage plate on it. That's how old it is. When you're looking for rust, you're going to be looking at the weak points on the underpinning of the chassis. You know, this is going to be the jack points. This is going to be in the rear end. You'll see it start to get a little crumbly, and then it will get really concerning if it gets past all of that and gets like to stuff like the floor pan. But it does happen. And that's the unfortunate thing when you're buying some of these cars, is that on the surface it could look all right, but when you look in further detail underneath is when it starts to look like a complete nightmare. The biggest dead giveaway though is usually on the rear quarter panels, because that's where a lot of salt and dirt gets flung up in the back and it gets trapped, and that's what will start the whole rusting process. And rust is just like almost like a cancer for a car, and it will just start to deteriorate before you know it. And if you're going to be planning on doing a full restoration on the car, that's not a big deal, but that could be a huge and very spendy project if you're going to be looking for something half decent. And something I wanted to mention too that I feel like not a lot of people talk about when it comes to buying a car is choosing the right chassis. So what's great about something like a 3 Series BMW is that they have so many different variations. If we're going to be just talking about like the E36 and E46s, they came with you know, the compact, the convertibles, the sedan, and the coupe. So it's really like a preference point of what you're looking for. But there are ones that are going to be better for like a track build, for example. So a lot of these get turned into race cars, drift cars, used for road racing or even rally. But in this case, you want to make sure that you start off with the right one. So you see a lot of people, they'll go out there and they'll start looking for like a clean coupe or sedan, and then maybe get discouraged after a while seeing if they're outrageously overpriced, or they have a gazillion different problems, or they're super sketchy, and they'll go after and buy a convertible. But then you'll spend all that time and money trying to make the convertible into a race car when you could have just got the stiffer chassis and would have saved you a lot of headache. Now there's people that do this, you know, I got nothing against convertibles, but I think if you just want to have fun as like a top-down cruiser, you're going to enjoy it a lot more than trying to put a full roll cage in it, and then you have the flex of a convertible, and they're going to be more temperamental, might lead to more electrical issues, especially if you have the fully automatic top in these things. So it may not be worth in the long run. And I feel like another chassis that gets kind of slept on is the compacts. So this is like the little 2-door hatchback that is the lightest of all these 3 Series from this generation. You know, you have to figure out a way to get more power out of them. So you probably have to do an engine swap. So this is going to get into more of like the hands-on mechanic that can do stuff like this. But there's a lot of pros to using something like the compact versus a coupe. But a lot of people will typically go for the coupe or sedan if you want the stiffest chassis. I don't know if it's actually true, but a lot of people have said that the sedan is actually the stiffest chassis out of all the lot. So if you're looking for one, I would say go for that. And honestly, just the usability of the sedan is going to be a huge win for me. But if you're going to ask me point blank, what's the most enjoyable one out of all of them, I would say the convertible is definitely the most enjoyable. Just from a top-down cruising perspective. But I've actually taken this car to autocross, and I wasn't pushing it super hard, but it will do it. And you know, the difference really in the rigidity is marginal at the end of the day. But there's a lot of safety regulations that will not let you run a convertible just because of how dangerous it could be if you were in a rollover. These do have the little bars that come out at the back seats, but still not the best place you want to be, especially if you're going to be tracking a car and driving it really hard. Now you may be wondering why you would actually want to buy one of these things now after I just told you all of these potential disasters. But I will say that it's very rewarding once you figure out one of these cars. I mean, once you get in one that's been properly done, it's just a very visceral experience, and it will really open your eyes to having so much fun with them. You'll find the joy in something like this where it may have its quirks, it may drive you a little bit mad, but that's all really a part of the charm. And even though it's flawed in its own way, it's still gonna be one of the best experiences for you to go through with owning something of a certain vintage. Now, it doesn't have to be a BMW, it could be anything that you like in particular, but I do think there is something about an old car that a lot of people, especially of the new generation, should go out and experience. And I think for this, there's only one way to really explain it, but I think we just need to get behind the wheel. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with the exhaust valve closed, so it'll be a little bit quieter, and then about halfway through the video, I'll turn it back on. At least let's hit the road. God, it's just beautiful today. Perfect day for a drive. It's a Sunday afternoon, so we may hit a little bit of traffic, but I'm hoping on this road that we can at least open it up and enjoy this car for what it is. And really, the E36, it can do things that'll drive you mad. Like, the airbag light is on, I have no idea why. The windshield wiper fluid spray thingamabobber, it shoots too high, so if you're driving with the top down, it gives you a little bit of a shower. But once you get past that, it's pretty brilliant. It's really good fun. Now, it doesn't feel as light on its feet as like a Miata, but it feels very stable, very solid. Like, you could cruise at high speeds on the highway in this car and it really is unbothered. And I think that's what I like about it the most, is it's just very comfortable. And yet you can chuck it in a corner and it's still a BMW, you know? It definitely has that driving edge to it and that pedigree. But since it's a convertible, you have a little bit of cowl shake that you'll have to kind of get used to. It's nothing really crazy. I felt other convertibles that feel a million times worse than this car. And one of the best investments you can do is the little wind shield in the back that's right behind you. It really cuts down on a lot of the turbulence that you'll get inside the cabin. So even though we have the top down and the windows up, it's relatively civilized in here. And even with the valve closed, it sounds really nice. Just that classic BMW inline-six sound. You really can't go wrong. Easy on the downshifts. I upgraded the shift knob to a Condor speed shop. It's got a nice hefty weight to it. Makes the throws a little bit easier because it's so tall. The exhaust sounds crazy, bouncing off the mountainside like this. God, what a thing. And as the seasons change, I think one of the best parts about this is you see all the leaves around turning different colors. I mean, you see the hues of yellow and red coming in. And even though summertime here is always going to be fun, I think one of my favorite seasons is the fall. You really get to